You are listening to Crime Unraveled, a Buck Taylor novel by Chuck Morgan.
Chapter 10. Buck stopped at the checkpoint just east of the Hanging Lake Tunnel and signed in with the sheriff's deputy on duty. He pulled forward and parked next to the tunnel entrance. He and Bax slid out of the Jeep and approached several men and women in hard hats and yellow safety vests. Buck recognized some of the people, shook hands and introduced Bax to several people she didn't know. Tom Curtis was the senior construction engineer with the Colorado Department of Transportation, his white hard hat highlighted by his dark skin. He was younger than Buck by a few years and was tall and thin. "Tom," said Buck. "Hell of a day, huh?" Tom smiled weakly. "Could have been worse. Had this happened in the middle of the afternoon, the death toll could have been huge." "Yeah," said Buck. "Tom, we need to look at the videos in the control room. Would that be okay? The tunnel has suffered some damage, but not as bad as I was told to expect. We haven't checked it all. My guys are in there now doing that. I can't guarantee your safety, but if you're willing, then have at it. The tunnel still has power, so everything in the control room should still be working. Let me know if you need anything." Buck thanked him, and he and Bax walked back to Buck's Jeep and grabbed a couple of yellow hard hats, yellow safety vests and N95 dust masks from the back. They grabbed their backpacks and a couple of bottles of water and walked into the tunnel. The dust from the landslide had settled several inches thick on the floor of the tunnel, and Buck spotted numerous footprints as they walked. He was glad they were both wearing dust masks, because a lot of the dust was very fine. They could hear Tom's team of engineers talking farther ahead. Halfway through the tunnel, Buck spotted the door to the control room and pushed it open. The sealed door had kept most of the dust and debris from entering the room. The control room was larger than Buck expected, with concrete walls painted a light green color and lots of fluorescent lights. Despite its stark appearance, the room was pleasant, with a white concrete floor that shone as though it had just been polished. There was a restroom off to one side, and a long desk along one wall that was covered by monitors. Buck looked at the bank of monitors, and was surprised to see that some monitors still had live images from the cameras. A lot of the images were blurry from the dust, and many had images at odd angles. Several of the monitors were blank. They set down their backpacks, and Bax pulled out her laptop and an HDMI cable and connected to the computer system. While she keyed in the access codes she had been given by C. Buck pulled his big maglite out of his backpack. "I want to walk a little farther down the tunnel. I'll be back," he said. Bax nodded and went back to her laptop. Buck pushed open the door and headed towards the west exit. He passed several teams of men and women checking the walls for cracks and taking measurements with some laser-guided equipment Buck had never seen before. "Buck Taylor," said a voice from in front of him. Buck looked at a small group of people looking at a large crack in the ceiling. "Hey, Corey. Been a long time." Buck shook hands with Corey Whitman. Corey was a bear of a man with red hair and a long red beard. He had been a tunnel engineer with C. for more than 30 years. "You running this show?" asked Buck. "Tom needed the best of the best on this, so he called me away from my nice cushy desk chair and here I am. What brings CBI out on a landslide, or wasn't this just a landslide?" "Nothing to worry about, Corey. The governor wants to cover all his bases. You know how he is." Buck and Corey laughed. Buck looked at the crack above them. "That doesn't look good," he said. "Nah. Looks can be deceiving," said Corey. "We sound tested it this morning, and it's solid. The tunnel construction held up. Of course, if the slide had triggered closer to the tunnel, then all bets would be off." "Any thoughts on why the canyon walls gave way?" "You guys have done a lot of work to stabilize things," said Buck. "We've had a lot of slide issues over the past couple of years, as you know, but all our testing said the slides were mostly dirt and mud washing down the face. We thought the walls were tight. Seems we were wrong. The first report I got was an earthquake. I don't know about that. We've been working in the canyon one way or another for a long time, and we've never had a quake that could cause this kind of damage." "I'll let you get back to it," said Buck. They shook hands, and Buck walked through the rest of the tunnel and out into the canyon. Buck spotted more teams of government folks checking the roadway and the side walls of the tunnel. He walked out of the tunnel and headed down the roadway, stepping around various sized boulders that littered the road. He stopped once he could see the huge wall of boulders and just stared. He walked over and looked down at the Colorado River below. The water level behind the rock slide was 10 feet below the roadway he was standing on. They wouldn't have a lot of time to get their work done before the river level overflowed the road and flowed into the tunnel. He pulled out his phone and took several pictures of the damaged roadway, the canyon walls, and the river below. Buck spotted something metallic near the broken edge of the road, walked over and kneeled next to it. He pulled a pair of black nitrile gloves out of his pocket and put them on. He pushed a couple of small rocks aside and brushed off the flat piece of metal. He pulled out his phone and took several pictures, then pulled an evidence bag from his back pocket and placed the small metal piece in the bag. He knew what the piece was. The red-colored background with the white flame and the partial number could be only one thing. He was looking at part of the hazmat placard from the back of a trailer. He stood and was turning to walk back to the tunnel when he spotted two men in hard hats and vests waving at him. The men approached. "Agent Taylor," said the first of the men to reach him. "Glad we found you." He stuck out his hand. "Dr. Jeremy Ratzenberger, USGS." He shook Buck's hand and pointed to the man behind him. "Todd Quinlan, my chief engineer." Buck shook both their hands, but he couldn't take his eyes off Dr. Ratzenberger. The doctor was on the portly side and shorter than Buck, but it was the purple ponytail sticking out from under his hard hat that caught Buck's attention. Todd Quinlan appeared to be fresh out of college and was muscular with dark hair. They both wore jeans and heavy work boots, and their boots were scuffed and scraped. Both men walked past Buck and stood looking at the rock slide. "Incredible," said Dr. Ratzenberger, pulling out his phone and taking a series of pictures of the rock face. "Max Clinton asked us to track you down," said Todd, "and the folks in Glenwood Springs told us you were on this side of the slide. That's quite a drive without the highway." They stared for a minute at the pile of rocks and did the same thing Buck had done, looked over the rail at the rising water. "That's gonna make a mess," said Todd. Buck nodded. "Gentlemen," said Buck, "what can I do for you?" "Sorry," said Dr. Ratzenberger. "Max said you were looking for an earthquake expert. That's why she called me. We work for the U.S. Geological Survey, and we've been studying earthquakes all over the world for more years than either one of us cares to count. We were in Denver at a meeting when I got the call, and we hot-footed right over." Buck looked at the massive rock slide behind him. "At first glance," said Buck, "what do you think?" Dr. Ratzenberger stared at the side wall of the canyon. "We'll know more once we take a look up top, but if this was an earthquake, it's one of the strangest we've seen." "How so?" Dr. Ratzenberger looked at the rock slide and then at Buck. It was like he was trying to figure out how to say what he was thinking without getting too technical. He moved closer to the edge of what was left of the roadway. There are several fault lines that run through much of this area. None of them appeared to traverse the area that collapsed, so an earthquake along a specific fault is unlikely. The other thing that's odd is the construction reports for I-70, which we pulled up on the way over. Experts stated in the reports that this rock wall was considered stable and hadn't moved in decades or even centuries. Now, decades of freeze-thaw cycles could have changed that, but that will require putting our eyes on the faults. "Okay," said Buck. "So what's the plan?" "We are going to trace some of the faults on both sides of the canyon and see if we can determine what moved. With any luck, we should be able to give you a preliminary assessment in the next day or two." Buck reached into his back pants pocket and handed them each a business card. "Thanks for your help," he said. "Let me know if you need anything." Dr. Ratzenberger and Todd gave Buck their business cards and headed back the way they came. Buck stood for another minute, looking at the canyon. He just turned to head back to the control center when his phone chimed with an incoming call.
Thank you for listening to this chapter of Crime Unraveled, a Buck Taylor novel by Chuck Morgan. You can find the entire crime series as well as other novels by Chuck Morgan at chuckmorganbooks.com or on Amazon.